All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about something pretty incredible, honeybees. And it turns out, we might have been getting their nutrition completely wrong for, well, over 100 years.
And look, this isn't just some abstract science problem. That quote, that's a real beekeeper watching his entire livelihood collapse. For years, the stuff we were feeding bees, the standard supplements, just wasn't working. So what on earth was going on?
And that's the big mystery, right? Beekeepers were doing everything by the book, giving them all these special feeds with what we thought were the right nutrients, but the bees were still getting sick, still struggling. It was obvious we were missing a huge piece of the puzzle. So to figure this out, scientists had to basically tear up the old rulebook and start from scratch. And that meant asking a totally different kind of question. Okay, look at this. This is the key shift. For decades, the old question was, what do we think bees need? We'd stick them in a lab, feed them one thing at a time, and then see what happened. But the new question, so simple, but so revolutionary, was just, forget what we think. What is actually in a bee's natural food out there in the wild? You know, this quote just nails it. Think about it. We know what high blood pressure is in a person because we have tons of data on what normal blood pressure looks like. For bees, we didn't have that baseline. We couldn't say a bee was unhealthy because we never really defined what healthy looked like in nature. So for almost 10 years, that's what scientists did. They built the first ever database of nature's perfect recipe for bees.
And you know what? As soon as they started getting that data, something massive just jumped off the page. A missing ingredient that we had completely overlooked, and it turned out to be one of the most important ones.
Okay, so check this out. On the left, that's the old artificial feed, based on this classic list of 10 essential amino acids. But on the right, that's natural pollen. And, wow, the single biggest, most dominant amino acid in a bee's real diet is something called proline. And in our feeds, it was basically non-existent. We were missing the main ingredient. And this is the thing. It wasn't just some small mistake. Propolis is absolutely critical. It's the backbone of their immune system. It acts like a natural antifreeze to help them survive winter. It's the fuel they use for that first burst of flight. And get this, bees can actually taste it. It's what tells them, hey, this is good food, eat up. We were literally leaving out the foundation of their health. But okay, that was just the first layer. The story gets way, way deeper. Because it turns out you're not just feeding the bee. You're feeding the trillions of tiny helpers living inside its gut. The best way to think about the bee's microbiome is like it's a built-in pharmaceutical factory. It's jam-packed with microbes that do all sorts of amazing things, like digesting parts of food the bee can't, and in the process, they create these brand new compounds that are absolutely vital for the bee's survival. So, one of the star workers in this little factory is a microbe called Bacillus subtilis. Now, the interesting thing is, it's not a permanent resident. It's more like a temp worker. Bees are constantly picking it up from flowers when they're out foraging, and they bring it back to the hive where it clocks in and gets to work.
So here's the production line. The bee brings this microbe home. The microbe starts munching on sugars in the hive's food stores. And as it ferments those sugars, it creates this crucial byproduct, vitamin K2. Then the bee just eats its food, which is now supercharged with this new vitamin.
And why is that a big deal? Well, vitamin K2 is like the maintenance crew for the bee's cellular power grid, the mitochondria. It goes in, makes repairs, and keeps the whole energy system stable and running efficiently. Without this little microbe doing its job, the bee's entire power supply starts to fail. Okay, so this next part is where things get really, really wild, because the latest science is showing these microbes don't just make nutrients, they actually send signals that control the bee's entire life cycle. Yep, the word for this is postbiotics, and you can think of them as chemical messages. They're what the microbes produce after they digest their food. But it's not waste, it's instructions. Instructions that tell the bee's body exactly what to do. So check out this incredible chain reaction. A microbe that lives in the gut, called Bifidobacterium, can do something the bee can't. It can break down the tough inner shell of a pollen grain. When it does that, it releases these postbiotic signals, and those signals travel through the bee's body and, get this, they directly trigger the hormones that tell the colony, it's spring, time to start raising babies. A microbe eating its lunch literally flips the on switch for the entire colony's growth. It's unbelievable. And this isn't just a theory. This is happening right now. This quote basically says it all. We're finally figuring out the direct mechanical link between what the gut bacteria are eating and how the entire colony functions. It's a completely new understanding of how life works.
So when you put all of this together, what does it mean? It means we have to completely change our goal. We need to stop looking for a simple fix and start thinking about the entire system.
For so long, the old goal was just stimulation. Pump the bees full of sugar and protein to force them to grow fast. But the new goal is totally different. It's resilience. It's about building a bee that has a complete, robust system, its own body plus all its microscopic partners, so it can actually handle the stresses of the real world.
And this is so important to get. There is no single magic bullet here. The solution isn't just add more proline, or it's not just add one microbe. All these pieces only work when they're together, interacting as a complete system, just like they do in nature.
And this really breaks it down perfectly. You need all three pillars. You need the direct nutrition with that full amino acid profile, especially proline. You need the energy support from those visiting microbes creating vitamin K2, and you need the hormonal signaling, where the gut bacteria are literally talking to the bee's body, telling it when to grow.
And that's what it all comes down to, that one word, resilience. It's not about forcing anything. It's about building the colony's natural strength to thrive. So if you take one thing away from all this, let it be this. You are never just feeding a bee. You're feeding the bee's entire microscopic ecosystem. And supporting that whole system, that's the only way we can truly help the honeybees. Which leaves us with a pretty mind-bending question, doesn't it? If we overlooked this incredibly complex, vital partnership for more than a century right under our noses, what other secret partnerships in nature are we just beginning to discover? Really makes you think. Thanks for joining me.